Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you today about something that can change your entire life if you truly understand it. I'm not talking about overnight success. I'm not talking about a miracle that happens while you're sleeping. I'm talking about improving yourself just 1% every single day in 2026. 1%. That sounds small, but don't let small fool you. Small things done consistently become life-changing things. See, most people don't fail because they aim too low. They fail because they quit too early. They want a brand new life without becoming a brand new person. But growth doesn't work like that. God doesn't bless confusion. Progress requires order, patience, and discipline. 1% a day means you wake up with intention. It means you decide that today, no matter what happens, you will be slightly better than you were yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, let me explain something powerful about improving yourself 1% every single day, because this idea sounds simple, but it is not easy, and that's why it works. Most people are looking for a breakthrough, a big moment, a sudden change that flips their life around overnight. But life doesn't usually move like that. Success is quiet at first. Growth is invisible in the beginning. 1% a day is not flashy, it doesn't get applause, and it doesn't make headlines, but it builds a foundation so strong that nothing can shake it once it's set. When you choose to improve 1% daily, you are choosing progress over perfection. You're saying, I don't have to get it all right today, but I refuse to stay the same. That mindset alone separates winners from quitters. People quit because they try to change everything at once. They overload themselves, they burn out, and then they tell themselves the story that they're not disciplined enough or talented enough. That's not true. They were just impatient. 1% a day removes the pressure and replaces it with consistency. See, small changes don't feel important in the moment. Reading 10 minutes doesn't feel like success. Saving a small amount of money doesn't feel like wealth. Waking up a little earlier doesn't feel like transformation. But those small actions stack up. And when they stack up long enough, they create momentum. Momentum is dangerous in a good way, because once you have it, life starts moving in your favor faster than you expected. 1% a day also teaches you humility. It reminds you that you are a work in progress. It keeps your ego in check. You stop comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. You stop rushing the process and start respecting it. Growth takes time because character takes time. Wisdom takes time. Strength takes time. Anything built too fast usually collapses just as quickly. Let me tell you something else. 1% a day trains your mind to win small battles. And when you learn how to win small battles, you gain confidence. Confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from evidence. When you keep promises to yourself every day, even tiny ones, you start to trust yourself. And once you trust yourself, you become unstoppable. Most people don't lack ability. They lack self-trust. 1% a day rebuilds that trust brick by brick. There will be days when 1% feels impossible. You'll be tired. You'll be discouraged. You'll feel like nothing is changing. Those are the most important days, because showing up on those days is what separates discipline from motivation. Anybody can improve when they feel good. Growth happens when you show up anyway. Even if all you can give is the smallest effort, give it. That still counts. 1% a day also forces you to be intentional. You stop living on autopilot. You start asking yourself better questions. What habit can I improve today? What thought do I need to let go of? What action moves me forward instead of holding me back? Improvement doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means doing less of what's hurting you. Letting go of negativity, excuses, and distractions is progress too. And don't underestimate the power of time. Time is either your greatest enemy or your greatest ally. When you waste it, it works against you. When you invest it, it multiplies for you. 1% a day turns time into a partner instead of a threat. Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And one day, you look back and realize you are standing in a place you once prayed for. This approach also builds resilience. When life hits you, and it will, you don't fall apart as easily. Why? Because you've been strengthening yourself daily. You've been preparing without even realizing it. 1% a day makes you stronger mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You become the kind of person who adapts instead of breaks, What I love about this idea is that anyone can do it. You don't need money. You don't need connections. You don't need permission. You just need a decision to show up for yourself today, and then make that same decision again tomorrow. Improvement becomes a lifestyle, not a goal. And when growth becomes who you are, success eventually finds you because you've become ready for it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that most people don't want to hear, but it's the truth. Motivation is not going to save you. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings change. Discipline is what carries you when motivation disappears. If you are serious about improving yourself 1% every day, you cannot build your life on how you feel. You have to build it on what you've decided. See, motivation shows up when things are exciting. It shows up at the beginning of the year, after a good speech, after a good video, after a win. But discipline shows up on regular days, on boring days, on hard days, on days when nobody is watching. That's the difference. People who win in life don't feel like doing the work every day. They do the work anyway. Most people say, I'll do it when I feel ready. Let me help you right now. You will never feel ready. Readiness comes after action, not before it. Discipline means you move first and let your feelings catch up later. When you wait on motivation, you give your future permission to be delayed. When you rely on discipline, you take control. Improving 1% a day through discipline means you decide in advance who you're going to be. You don't negotiate with your excuses every morning. You already made the decision. You already know what time you wake up. You already know what habit you're working on. You already know what you're not going to do. Discipline removes decision fatigue. It simplifies your life. Let me say this clearly. Discipline is self-respect in action. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when it's uncomfortable, you are telling yourself, I matter. And every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken your confidence. That's why so many people struggle with belief. It's not because they're incapable. It's because they've trained themselves not to trust themselves. 1% a day with discipline means you focus on systems, not moods. You don't say, I'll work out if I feel energetic. You say, this is just what I do. You don't say, I'll learn when I'm inspired. You say, this is part of my routine. When something becomes routine, it no longer requires motivation. It becomes automatic. Discipline also teaches you how to delay gratification. And that skill right there will separate you from the crowd. Most people want comfort now and success later. Disciplined people choose discomfort now so they can enjoy freedom later. 1% a day might mean saying no to short-term pleasure so you can say yes to long-term growth. That's not easy, but it's worth it. There will be days when discipline feels heavy, when it feels unfair, when it feels like you're doing all this work and getting nothing back. Those days are building your character. Discipline strengthens you in ways motivation never could. It makes you dependable. It makes you consistent. And consistency is more important than talent. Let me tell you something powerful. Discipline doesn't require confidence. It builds it. You don't need to believe in yourself to start. You just need to start. Confidence comes later after repetition, after proof, after showing up again and again. 1% a day with discipline turns effort into evidence, and evidence creates belief. Discipline also protects your focus. It helps you stop reacting to everything around you. You stop letting distractions, opinions, and negativity pull you off course. You know what you're working toward, so you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't going where you're going. Discipline gives you boundaries, and boundaries give you peace. And here's the truth most people miss. Discipline is a form of freedom. It doesn't trap you, it releases you. When you're disciplined, you're no longer controlled by laziness, fear, or excuses. You're in charge. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need permission. You just execute. Improving yourself 1% a day through discipline is not about being extreme. It's about being reliable. It's about showing up when it's quiet, when it's uncomfortable, and when it's hard. Because when discipline becomes your lifestyle, success is no longer a matter of if, it's only a matter of time. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about something that separates people who dream from people who actually become, and that is consistency. Consistency beats intensity every single time. You don't need to do something big once in a while. You need to do something small every single day. That's how real change happens. 1% improvement a day is not about heroic effort. It's about reliable effort. See, most people get excited, go all, Xpedi 3 kiwaran 700 waward sawai shidiign kan kilon. Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak to you about consistency, because consistency is the bridge between who you are and who you're trying to become. A lot of people confuse intensity with progress. They think if they go hard for a week, a month, or even a day that it's enough. But intensity burns out. Consistency builds lives. 1% every day works only if you show up every day, not when you feel like it, not when it's convenient, but when it's required. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack follow-through. They start strong and finish weak. They make promises in emotional moments and abandon them when reality shows up. Consistency means you stop depending on excitement and start depending on structure. You don't need to feel inspired to stay consistent. You need a routine that carries you when inspiration is gone. Consistency teaches you patience. It forces you to accept that progress takes time. We live in a world that celebrates instant results, but anything worth having takes repetition. You don't get strong by lifting once. You don't get wise by learning once. You don't change your life by trying once. You change it by repeating the right actions long after the excitement has faded. 1% a day with consistency means you understand that success is cumulative. Nothing you do today is wasted, even if you can't see the results immediately. Every small action is a deposit, and just like money in the bank, those deposits grow with time. The problem is most people keep checking their balance too soon. They quit because they don't see results fast enough. Consistent people trust the process even when the process feels slow. Consistency also builds identity. You stop saying, "I'm trying," and you start saying, "This is who I am." You become the kind of person who shows up, the kind of person who finishes, the kind of person who doesn't need to announce what they're doing because their actions speak for them. When consistency becomes part of your identity, improvement becomes automatic. There will be days when consistency feels boring. Let me be honest with you, most of success is boring. It's repetition, it's routine. It's doing the same things over and over with excellence. If you're always chasing excitement, you'll abandon consistency. And if you abandon consistency, you abandon results. Growth happens in the ordinary moments, not the highlight reel. 1% a day also means you forgive yourself quickly, but correct yourself immediately. Consistency does not mean perfection. You will miss days. You will mess up. That's human. The danger is not in slipping, it's in stopping. Consistent people don't quit because of one bad day. They reset and continue. They don't turn a mistake into an identity. Consistency trains your mind to focus on what you can control. You can't control outcomes. You can't control timing. You can't control other people. But you can control your daily actions. When you focus on your 1%, you stop being overwhelmed by the big picture. You stop asking, "How am I going to change my whole life?" and start asking, "What's one thing I can do today?" Let me tell you something powerful. Consistency creates confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you've been putting in the work, even when nobody was watching. That confidence is unshakable because it's built on proof, not opinions. You don't need validation when you've been consistent. You already know what you're capable of. Consistency also protects you from comparison. When you're locked into your daily progress, you don't waste time watching what everyone else is doing. You understand that everyone has a different pace, a different path, and a different process. You stay in your lane because you're busy building your life 1% at a time. And here's the truth. Consistency is not about being perfect every day. It's about being committed every day. It's about deciding that no matter what happens, you're not going back to who you used to be. You may move slowly, but you keep moving. You may stumble, but you don't stop. 1% improvement through consistency turns ordinary people into extraordinary examples. Not because they did something magical, but because they did something simple for a long time. And in the end, that's what separates those who talk about change from those who actually live it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about self-awareness and honesty, because real growth does not begin with action. It begins with truth. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge. A lot of people want a better life, but they don't want to have an honest conversation with themselves. They want results without reflection. But 1% improvement every day starts the moment you stop pretending and start paying attention. Self-awareness means you are willing to look at yourself without excuses. Not with judgment, not with shame, but with clarity. You ask yourself hard questions. Why do I keep repeating the same mistakes? Why do I quit when things get uncomfortable? Why do I react the way I do under pressure? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary. Growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Most people spend their lives pointing fingers. They blame their past, their parents, their partner, their boss, the system, the economy. And while some of those things may have hurt you, blaming them keeps you stuck. Honesty gives you your power back. The moment you say, I am responsible for my next move, your life begins to change. 1% a day means taking ownership not just of your wins, but of your weaknesses. Self-awareness also means recognizing your patterns. You don't just look at what happened, you look at why it keeps happening. If you keep starting and stopping, there's a reason. If you keep settling, there's a reason. If you keep sabotaging opportunities, there's a reason. When you understand the reason, you can change the behavior. Without awareness, you repeat the cycle and call it fate. Let me tell you something important. Being honest with yourself does not make you weak. It makes you free. Pretending takes energy. Lying to yourself takes energy. Defending habits that are hurting you takes energy. Honesty releases that energy and allows you to redirect it toward growth. 1% improvement sometimes means admitting, I don't know what I'm doing, or I need help, or this isn't working. That admission is not failure, it's wisdom. Self-awareness also helps you stop comparing yourself to others. When you know who you are, you stop trying to be who you're not. You stop chasing goals that don't align with you. You stop copying someone else's path and then wondering why you're unhappy. Growth is personal. Your 1% is not going to look like anybody else's, and that's okay. Another powerful part of self-awareness is understanding your triggers. What makes you angry? What makes you shut down? What makes you procrastinate? These reactions don't come out of nowhere. They're signals. And if you listen to them instead of ignoring them, they can teach you a lot about what you need to work on. 1% a day means you respond with intention instead of reacting out of habit. Honesty also requires you to evaluate your strengths, not just your flaws. Some people stay stuck because they only focus on what's wrong with them. Self-awareness is balanced. It says, this is where I need to improve, and this is where I am gifted. When you understand both, you stop wasting time trying to fix what isn't broken, and you start sharpening what already works. Let me say this clearly. Self-awareness does not mean overthinking. It means observing. It means paying attention without beating yourself up. Improvement is not punishment. It's alignment. 1% a day is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of who you're meant to be. As you become more honest with yourself, your decisions get better. Your relationships get healthier. Your goals get clearer. You stop moving randomly and start moving intentionally. You stop reacting to life and start directing it. That's what awareness does. It puts you in the driver's seat. And here's the truth. The more aware you become, the more responsible you become. You can't unsee what you see. Once you recognize a bad habit, you can't pretend you don't know better. But that's a good thing. Because knowledge gives you choice, and choice gives you power. 1% improvement through self-awareness is quiet work. Nobody claps for it. Nobody sees it. But it changes everything. When you commit to being honest with yourself every day, even in small ways, you stop living on autopilot. You start living on purpose. And that is where real, lasting growth begins. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about your environment, because whether you realize it or not, your environment is either helping you grow or quietly holding you back. People like to believe that success is only about willpower, but willpower gets tired. Your surroundings don't. What you see, what you hear, who you're around, and what you allow into your mind every day is shaping you more than you think. 1% improvement begins with understanding that you are influenced before you are inspired. Your environment includes the people you spend time with. Some people don't mean you harm, but they don't mean you growth either. They are comfortable where they are, and comfort has a way of spreading. When you surround yourself with people who complain, make excuses, and settle for less, that mindset starts to feel normal. On the other hand, being around people who are disciplined, focused, and intentional raises your standards without them saying a word. 1% a day sometimes means changing who has access to you. Let me be clear. This is not about cutting people off in anger or pride. It's about protecting your direction. Everyone can't go where you're going, and that doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different. Growth requires alignment. If you're trying to build a better future, you cannot constantly sit in spaces that celebrate the past. Your environment is also what you feed your mind. The music you listen to, the videos you watch, the conversations you engage in, these things are seeds, and seeds grow. If you constantly feed your mind negativity, fear, gossip, and doubt, don't be surprised when that's what shows up in your thoughts. 1% improvement might mean replacing 10 minutes of scrolling with 10 minutes of learning. That small shift can change the direction of your thinking over time. Your physical environment matters too. The condition of your space reflects the condition of your mind. When your surroundings are cluttered, your thoughts often are as well. Cleaning up your space is not just about being neat, it's about clarity. When you organize your environment, you reduce distractions and create room to focus. 1% a day might simply be putting things back where they belong, and that discipline spills into other areas of your life. Let me tell you something powerful. Your environment should make the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. If you want to improve your health, surround yourself with better options. If you want to improve your mindset, surround yourself with better information. If you want to improve your discipline, create routines that support it. Don't rely on strength, rely on structure. Many people sabotage their growth without realizing it. They say they want change, but they keep everything the same. Same habits, same conversations, same routines, same excuses. Change doesn't work like that. 1% improvement requires intentional shifts, not dramatic ones, intentional ones. Small changes in your environment create big changes in your behavior. Your environment also includes what you tolerate. What you allow to continue will continue. If you tolerate disrespect, laziness, or chaos, you're telling yourself that's acceptable. Raising your standards is a form of self-respect. 1% a day might mean saying no where you used to say yes, or setting a boundary where you used to stay silent. And let's talk about solitude. Sometimes the environment you need most is silence. Growth requires moments of isolation, not loneliness, but focus. Time to think, time to reflect, time to hear your own voice. When you're always surrounded by noise, you can't hear direction. 1% a day might mean taking a few minutes away from everyone and everything to reconnect with yourself. Your environment will not change on its own. You have to shape it. You have to decide what stays and what goes. And as you grow, your environment will need to grow with you. What worked for you last year may not work for you this year. That's not failure, that's progress. When you intentionally design your environment to support your goals, improvement stops feeling like a fight. It becomes natural. It becomes easier to show up, easier to stay consistent, and easier to believe in what you're building. 1% improvement through your environment is quiet, but it is powerful. Over time, it turns effort into alignment, and alignment makes growth sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about faith, patience, and action, because real growth happens when these three work together. A lot of people have faith but no action. Others take action but have no patience. And some are patient but don't truly believe. 1% improvement every day requires balance. You have to believe something better is possible, be patient enough to let it develop, and disciplined enough to keep moving even when nothing seems to be happening. Faith is not just believing things will work out. Faith is trusting that your effort matters even when you don't see results yet. It's waking up and doing the right thing without proof that it will pay off immediately. Faith allows you to plant seeds without standing over the ground asking when they're going to grow. 1% a day is an act of faith because you are investing in a future you cannot yet see. Patience is what keeps you steady when progress feels slow. We live in a world that wants everything now. Fast success, fast money, fast recognition. But fast growth often skips the lessons you need to sustain success. Patience teaches you endurance. It teaches you how to stay calm while you're waiting. And waiting is not passive. Waiting is working quietly without applause. Many people quit not because they can't do it, but because they can't wait. They give up right before things start to change. 1% improvement requires you to accept that timing is not in your control, but effort is. When you focus on your daily effort instead of the outcome, patience becomes easier. You stop rushing the process and start respecting it. Action is where belief turns into reality. Faith without action is just hope, and hope without movement doesn't change anything. 1% a day means you do something small, something intentional, every single day. You don't wait until conditions are perfect. You move with what you have. Action builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Let me tell you something important. Action does not require clarity. It creates clarity. Most people wait until they feel certain before they move, but certainty comes after repetition. When you take action consistently, even small action, you start to understand what works and what doesn't. You adjust, you grow, you get better. That's the process. Faith also keeps you grounded when results start to come. It reminds you that you didn't get here alone. It keeps you humble. It keeps you grateful. And gratitude protects your mindset. When you appreciate the journey, you don't get bitter about the wait. You don't feel entitled. You stay teachable. Patience teaches you emotional control. It helps you stop reacting to setbacks as if they're permanent. A bad day doesn't mean a bad life. A slow season doesn't mean failure. 1% improvement is about staying steady through highs and lows. When you develop patience, you stop quitting on yourself every time things get hard. Action also builds courage. Fear loses its power when you move. You may still feel afraid, but you're no longer stuck. 1% a day doesn't eliminate fear. It teaches you how to move with it. And every time you act despite fear, you grow stronger. There will be days when faith is tested, patience is stretched, and action feels heavy. Those days matter the most. Those are the days that shape your character. Growth is not just about getting better results. It's about becoming a stronger person. 1% improvement is as much internal as it is external. When faith, patience, and action come together, improvement becomes sustainable. You're no longer desperate. You're no longer rushing. You're no longer stuck. You're steady. You trust the process because you are committed to it. You understand that every small step is part of something bigger. 1% a day with faith keeps you hopeful. With patience, it keeps you calm. With action, it keeps you moving. And when you keep moving long enough with belief and endurance, progress becomes inevitable. That's how real change happens, quietly, steadily, and with purpose.